Really excited to be here and have this opportunity to speak with you all today about Pieta House and the services that we provide and how we work with children largely. So this is a very, very interesting topic to me because I read this piece of legislation and looked at it and attempted to understand it. And of course I have no background in law whatsoever, so I'm going to be looking to you guys to help me out with that and help me understand. And I'm really excited to hear all the speakers here today as well. So generally, I guess I like to start off by explaining a little bit about the services that we provide at Pieta House. And for anybody here that has children, it's nice to kind of get an overview, I suppose, as well of what we do provide, or any carers or people who are working with kids on a daily basis or have anything to do with the young people in our country. So, of course, in 2006, Pieta House was started off by Joan Freeman. And it was primarily a crisis intervention service for people who were thinking about suicide or who had attempted suicide. So it started off, of course, as crisis intervention. It has continued as crisis intervention, and it has grown since then. So today we offer a very wide range of other services with Pieta House. So now we look at self-harm, which is huge in regard to working with young people. So I'd say that statistically the highest rate of admissions into Pieta House currently are under the age of 18, particularly in the Midlands, and their presenting condition is suicide ideation and self-harm. So the two are the highest of all out of anything. And there's a lot of other age brackets that come after age 18, and to think that the highest rate of people accessing our service are actually under that age bracket is quite shocking, and are indeed in crisis. So we provide a bereavement service as well. So for any family or friend who has been bereaved by suicide, we also provide that service to children too. And also our SPLO services are suicide bereavement liaison officers who go out across the country to families who have just recently been bereaved to suicide. They would attend the coroner's court. Many of you guys here would know about that. So the job of the SPLO is to support the family in the very first instance after the loss to help normalise what has happened. They will attend the coroner's court as well to support the family in that. But it is a very person-centred approach. If you're aware, there's no direction given. It is mainly supportive. After about 8 weeks, the family can then engage with Pieta House. So the entire family can come in as a group, or they can come in individually. In our centre in Pieta Midlands, which is the one that I manage currently, I am also a therapist there. We work with children. There's 3 of us that work with children under the age of 12, and there are 7 of us that work with children under the age of 18. The rest of the therapists, there's 12 of us there all together. Some specialise in working with bereavement and others specialise in working with crisis interventions. All of us are highly qualified. My own background is in psychological trauma therapy. And I was just talking to Colin a little while in the beginning about my background coming in from addiction and moving on to psychological trauma therapy, and now I work with Pieta House for the last year and a half. I have to say, for me personally, it's an absolute dream come true to work for such an amazing organisation. I absolutely love my work, genuinely. Some people think it's really, really difficult, but the initial stages when somebody walks into our centre, and our ethos is warmth and compassion and care, and that is the first thing that we're meeting everybody with. Every individual person, every child, every family member, every parent are met with the warmth, compassion and care and integrity first of all. And then the process or the journey that they go through with us is largely solution focused. So we're looking at the solutions, we're preserving life, we're changing self-harm to self-care, and that is our mission. And ultimately, I guess it's Pieta House's mission to relinquish the stigma around mental health issues in Ireland, first and foremost, so that everyone is able to talk about it. And part of our mission is coming and speaking to groups of people like yourselves, professional people, and this is where it starts. It starts with us. If we are able to stand up and say, yes, mental health has been an issue in my family or personally with me, then that's a massive icebreaker for the rest of the people in our country. And Pieta House are committed to delivering that message across the country. We're committed to relinquishing the stigma attached to mental health, and not just suicide, mental health as a whole. What we are seeing is there is a knock-on effect. There are more and more young people accessing our services. This can be seen as, an awful thing, like, oh my God, there's so many more people accessing our services. But it can also be seen as a very positive thing as well. It's great that people now have the awareness of our services and they know that they can access it. And unlike CAMHS, we don't need a GP referral. People can self-refer. You can just pick up the phone and make a phone call and come in. A family member can refer you in a way as long as you are there. Many of the clients who call our services on a daily basis are unable to speak. They are gone so low in themselves and troubles have gotten so bad that they are unable to speak for themselves. And of course, children are unable to speak for themselves, or so they say, I would have a different opinion of that, having worked with children for quite some time. I think they're well able to speak for themselves these days. And it's great to see a little bit more. We're going to shame you walking in here. Shall we? So when we work with young people, I suppose it's very important for us to go and introduce ourselves to them first and make sure that they want to be in our service. What we see happening in Pieta House sometimes is that parents tend to trick their teenagers into coming in. I don't know if that happens with you guys, or we have to go to something and the next thing then they're landed at an appointment with us. They have no idea where they're going. They think they're going to the shop or something, and then all of a sudden it's a counselling session, like an assessment. So within our assessment, we would always ask the young people, are you aware of what we do here? Did your parent or guardian tell you what you were coming to today or why you were coming here? And if they haven't been, from the get-go, we are informing that young person of the services that we provide, why they've been taken there. So we're not buying into or colluding with parents or guardians around tricking children into counselling, basically. There needs to be assent, I think you call it, is it, from the child as well? Is that right? Don't be afraid to speak now. And help me out a little bit. So we do get that from children as well, to make sure that they're all okay with being with us, because we get the best out of them that way. So I was asked today to just give a couple of little case studies maybe as well around how we work with young people. So one springs to mind, where I would have went to a meeting with the Tulsa and CAMHS around a particular client. She was 17 years of age. She'd been engaged with the system for quite a long time. There were multiple issues within the family. There was multiple mental health issues. Mum was a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. So there was lots of change going on in the family all the time and lots of disorganised behaviour. The child came to us for the treatment of self-harm and suicide ideation. She had had 3 suicide attempts. She had been self-harming from the age of 13. And engaged with the services since she was 9. So she was in and out of CAMHS. Tulsa were involved, of course. And from our perspective at Pieta House, we would work very, very closely with the mental health services in our area. So we would stick very closely with CAMHS, and we would work very closely with Tulsa as well, which is our child and family agency. So our work with the child was quite difficult, I have to say, because it was our mission, I suppose, and our aim to try to help her self-care instead of self-harm. But things were so disorganised at home that she would go home and do really well for a few days, and then the next thing something would kick off at home. There would be an argument between mum and dad. Mum had an awful habit of putting the child down quite badly. So there was a lot of emotional abuse within that family. And the child would stop eating. If she couldn't self-harm, she would stop eating. So we were working with MIDAS as well, which is the addiction services, because there was drugs in the family and there was all sorts of things going on. She had clearly an eating disorder then as well, coupled with this. So there was a very large variety of mental health issues and addictions and everything going on within this family. And Pieta House is an organisation. We are there to target one area, just one simple area of this. So if we gather nothing else out of of this meeting today, that we really need to come together more closely. We really do need to work together for the benefit of children nationwide. And for this young person, I felt that all the services that were involved were just tipping the iceberg, and none of us were really getting to the root of the issue at all, you know. And that was quite heartbreaking for us in Pieta House, and quite difficult, because when you're just one service and you're focusing on one area, which was self-harm and suicide ideation, so you're trying to preserve the life of this child, number one, and number two, you're trying to help her stop self-harming and start self-caring. And then the mental health services for the adult, it's like, you know, when is this going to stop? You know, when is something going to happen here for this mum to be okay? Because there's suffering in all of those areas. Everybody in that family was suffering and didn't have the skills or the ability to help the child really, and that's where she needed it most, was from her home. The question, I suppose, that landed on us was, is she better in the home or outside of the home? So Tulsa and Cams and I, we sat down together and we discussed it. And the conclusion, I suppose, that we came to at the end of it was that this child needed to be placed in Glendara. So Glendara would be for psychiatric care of under 18s. But she was 17 going on 18, so she was really, really close to missing the bar in that. Thankfully, she was able to be taken by them and progressed really well, and the eating disorder was worked on, and everything came together, you know, within that services. I feel personally we don't have enough of those services in Ireland. We need so much more. There's just not enough there to help. But I'm very proud of the relationship that Pieta House have with the health services in Ireland for our teenagers and our young people, in the one sense, because I do see them working really, really hard to help young people with mental health disorders. But I think the piece around the family unit is a little missing, and I think that there needs to be more done around that. Another issue that comes up for us at Pieta House would be, we say, you know, the way you guys have to have a GP referral to get into CAMS. Well, for Pieta House, we're working professionals, we're trained in crisis intervention. So what Cams and I discussed was, it was coming into a situation where suicide ideation was almost being put on the form, so a child would be referred to Cams. And there wouldn't necessarily be any major psychiatric issues there at all. But they were being referred in, which was causing a massive backlog. So what we did was we wrote out to all the GPs and we said, we are qualified to work with self-harm and to work with suicide ideation in young people. So please feel free to make referrals to us or have clients self-refer to our service. And this was wonderful. We got a fantastic response from the Midlands area in this, because it took the pressure off. There's not as many services in the Midlands as there are maybe in Dublin, you know, and then Colin was saying to me earlier as well, there's still issues with that. It depends on what area of Dublin that you're in as well, and you can only go to a certain area. For CAMS, you know, there's Laois, Offaly, Westmeath and Roscommon, and they're all different areas. Like you can't go into CAMS in Roscommon the same way you can go to CAMS in Mullingar. And I'm hearing that it's pretty much the same up here as well. Pieta House, it doesn't matter where you go to Pieta House. If you live in Athlone, you can go to Pieta Galway. Or you can go to Pieta Lucan. We have 15 centres nationwide. We have 5 outreach services now. We have a helpline number that's there. It's open to everybody, child and adult, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a free number, 1-800 24/7 24/7. Quite amply numbered, I would say. So I'm delighted with that, and there's a fully qualified therapist on the other end of that line. So from our perspective, we're doing our best to drive service provision and to really bridge the gap that's there currently. And within that as well, back in 2015, we developed a Resilience Academy as well for young people. So we currently roll that out in secondary schools. We work with 14-year-old students. They're about the age of 13, 14, 15. And what it focuses on is building their resilience. So kids are aware of mental health issues. They know all about them. All they've got to do is type it into Google and they get a full synopsis, and they're nearly self-diagnosing in a way, which is quite dangerous too. I'm sure you'll agree. But, you know, once they click into that and they're reading it, they think they have this, that and the other, and they come into us then with suicide ideation. It's usually stress, you know, and you might wonder what could possibly be stress in a young person. There are several things. I mean, what I gather from today, most of you are dealing with really serious cases. And I have no idea really what that is like, because in Pieta House we're not doctors, we're not psychiatrists. We are simply working with the feeling. We're finding solutions. That's what our goal is, I suppose, where we are. But the Resilience Academy covers a lot more. So the Resilience Academy looks at mental health, okay, first of all, and that's one of the modules. And we really aim, I suppose, to empower students to choose which modules do they want to do. So of course we did a piece of research around this, first of all, to find out what were the 8 main things that stressed our children out and what would help them. What did they think they wanted or needed from that? So what came back from it then was 8 modules. I hope I can remember them all off the top of my head, but the first one anyway was mental health. Okay, so what we do is we look at mental health and we ask the class, okay, so what's mental health? What's it about? Is it positive mental health? There's negative mental health, there's bad feelings, good feelings, sad, all of that. So we go through the emotions, we go through the cognition, we go through what people's perspective as. Somebody has a black and white thinking, and somebody else might walk down the corridor, for example, and say hello to someone and they don't speak to you. What did I feckin' do to her? Or what's her problem? And it's about perspectives and the way they think. So we bring them into it and we play games with them to show them what it's like for somebody who's really suffering with depression or a mental health disorder or a learning difficulty. So that's all in the first class we do with them. And then the other 5 classes are all about solutions. We're building their resilience. We're showing them who to go to for help, how to identify it in a friend and how you can help and where to go to. So we're signposting them all the time. We're, doing funny games with them to get them to open their posture, and we're Superman today, and this is going to build our confidence. We're going to do power poses. And we teach them what happens in their bodies. When you open your body posture, you're sending an automatic message to your brain to say, I'm safe. Whereas if we're sitting there like this and we're crouched over, our bodies are telling our brains instantly that we need to protect our internal organs. So everybody's doing this now. Yeah, I'm not scared at all. Which is why I'm clinging on to the edge of this here for support. So we go through little things like that, and they might seem like little things, but a lot of people don't know about them, I guess, and it's a great way to open things. If we look at any self-help programs, or I don't know if you guys watch anything to do with Tony Robbins, he's an amazing speaker, and he talks a lot about the brain. So we bring stuff like that in with the kids, but we use people they identify with. So we use Tupac and 50 Cent and all these footballers then as well, and on top of I can't remember them, but then we use people as well like J.K. Rowling, and we talk about how resilient she was, for example. She was refused she was laughed at, everyone she went to never thought that Harry Potter would make it, and look at her now. She's just the most incredible writer ever, she's amazing. So it reflects to them that no matter how many times you fall down, keep getting back up. So that's the direction we're going in, I suppose, with Pieta House, and we're hoping that one day Pieta House as a centre will not be needed. That we will have gotten that far, that there will be no suicide ideation, that people won't go to suicide as an option. They won't think about it because help is always going to be there. They'll know this from an early age, that this is where I go if I feel down, before it gets to the stage where they feel like they'd be better off not here. So that's our Resilience Academy. We cover many other different modules, as I was saying, around it. We cover sexuality and sexual orientation. We cover school stress as well. That was one that they brought up. They find teachers quite stressful for some reason as well. Particularly around exam time, we see a lot of Leaving Cert students coming in presenting with self-harm where they just cannot cope. It gets too much, the head becomes very full, and then they'll act out on themselves. And it's almost as if their body becomes a canvas for the pain that they're going through. And unfortunately, for centuries, we've looked at self-harm as attention seeking. She's just looking for attention now by cutting herself, and it's only scratches, and it's only bits. But that can go to a suicide in an instant. It can just tip over the edge. I worked with one particular girl as well, maybe a year ago, who used to drink bleach every now and again. She'd just take a little sip, and all the inside of her mouth was so badly burnt and damaged from doing this. But it was a total distraction to her. So can you imagine if something really bad happened in her life? For example, if she lost one of her primary caregivers in that instance, she could drink a lot more of that and potentially cause death. So we take self-harm very, very seriously, no matter how little we think it is. And there's all different types of self-harm as well that our clients present with. There's picking at their skin or their faces, pulling their hair out, burning themselves. I worked with a young lad for a while as well, who had started out punching walls. So then his mother put a quilt all over the wall so he wouldn't hurt himself. So this is great in one sense, but what actually happened is then that he started banging his head off it, and then the next thing he started burning himself. And I know it sounds so shocking, but we don't ask people to stop. When parents come to us, they're so distressed, so distressed, and they just want you to fix it. And they come in and they say to us, you're going to make them stop, aren't you? And they so desperately want you to give them hope, but we just can't give them that hope in that moment. We can give them security and we can say, we're certainly going to do our best with your child, but you need to be patient. This is going to take time. We explain to them that this is used as a coping mechanism, that they can't cope with whatever's going on, either in their outside or their inside world. I know that we associate deliberate self-harm with childhood sexual abuse, which is something I would have worked with quite a lot, or borderline personality disorders. In Pieta House, we don't really work so much with that unless it's been, I suppose if it's depression, no problem. If it goes to schizophrenia that's unmedicated, then we're not qualified to work with that, or borderline personality disorder, or multiple personality disorders. We wouldn't be equipped to work with it. And then any of the kids who are on the higher end of the spectrum then for autism, we wouldn't be equipped to work with them either. So this is stuff that we need to change because, as Colin said earlier, there is more and more diagnoses coming in all the time, and I wonder how many of them are validated myself. Maybe we're giving the child too much sugar. I've had that said to me a few times, but we just never know, So in Pieta House, I suppose, really what we're looking to do at the end of the day is change the resilience of the child first, get them on a path to their own recovery so they can identify if they have any issues themselves, that they know who to go to, and then Pieta House is there if there is self-harm, suicide ideation, or a loss or a bereavement within the family unit. So I don't know if I have any more information available for you guys on that.